Michael had never paid much attention to smiles. To him, a smile was simply a smile. People smiled when they were happy. They smiled to be polite. Sometimes they smiled without meaning anything at all. At least, that's what he believed. Until he met Ava. She worked in the same office but on a different floor. They weren't close friends. They rarely spoke for more than a few minutes. Yet every time they crossed paths, something felt different. She smiled. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to make the moment feel warmer. Michael thought nothing of it. She's probably just friendly. Days turned into weeks. Weeks became months. Slowly, he began noticing something strange. Ava smiled differently around him than she did around everyone else. One afternoon he walked into the office kitchen to grab a cup of coffee. Several coworkers were already there. Ava was talking with them. She laughed politely. Her smile appeared for a second, then disappeared. Moments later Michael entered. She looked toward the door. The instant their eyes met, her expression changed. Her smile became softer. Her eyes became brighter. She held eye contact for a moment longer than usual. Then quietly said, "Morning." It wasn't the word that stayed with Michael. It was the way she said it. The warmth felt personal. Still, he ignored it. He had promised himself long ago not to imagine feelings that weren't there. A week later Michael met his older brother Daniel for dinner. Daniel had always been good at reading people. After listening carefully, he asked, "Can I ask you something?" Michael nodded. "Does she smile like that with everyone?" "I don't know." "Then watch. Don't assume. Observe." That advice sounded simple, but it changed everything. For the next several days Michael paid attention without trying to force any conclusions. He noticed something interesting. Whenever Ava greeted other people, her smile was quick, friendly, professional. But whenever she spoke to him, her smile arrived before her words, almost as if seeing him automatically made her happier. Psychologists often explain that genuine emotions appear in tiny unconscious behaviors. Most people control their words. Very few people successfully control their facial expressions. Especially when they're surprised. Especially when someone important suddenly appears. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, Michael was walking toward the parking lot carrying several heavy boxes. Without warning, one slipped from his hands. Papers scattered across the wet pavement. Before anyone else reacted, Ava hurried over. "Oh no." She immediately knelt beside him. For several minutes they gathered papers together while laughing at the unexpected mess. Finally everything was back inside the box. Michael looked up. Ava was smiling. Not because dropping papers was funny. Because they were sharing the moment together. There was something peaceful about the way she looked at him. No rush. No distraction. Just genuine attention. On the drive home Michael kept thinking about it. People don't usually remember ordinary conversations. Yet somehow, he remembered every smile she had given him. Why? Because genuine warmth leaves emotional memories. Several days later the company organized a small lunch for the staff. Everyone gathered around large tables. People talked in different groups. Michael arrived a little late. As he entered the room, Ava was already speaking with 3 coworkers. She noticed him almost immediately. Without interrupting her conversation, she smiled. Not politely, naturally. Almost instinctively. Michael smiled back. Daniel's words suddenly echoed in his mind. Observe. So he did. Over. The next hour he noticed something else. Whenever Michael spoke, Ava listened differently. She leaned forward slightly. She maintained eye contact. She laughed even before he reached the funny part of the story. Not because every joke was brilliant. Because she enjoyed hearing him speak. That's another silent sign people often overlook. When someone genuinely likes being around you, they begin responding to your emotions instead of simply listening to your words. A smile becomes less about politeness and more about connection. A few days later Michael experienced something that made him even more curious. He walked into the office early one morning. Almost nobody had arrived. Only Ava sat near the window reading emails. She looked tired, serious, completely focused on her work. She didn't notice him. As Michael quietly passed by, he accidentally dropped his car keys. The sound echoed across the room. Ava looked up. The serious expression disappeared instantly. A smile appeared almost automatically. It happened so quickly that she probably didn't even realize it herself. Michael noticed. Because genuine emotions don't wait for permission. They're automatic. Later that afternoon he mentioned it to Daniel. I think she smiles differently around me. Daniel smiled knowingly. What kind of smile? Michael thought carefully. It feels warmer. Daniel nodded. Then don't focus only on the smile. What do you mean? Look at what happens before the smile. Michael looked confused. Daniel explained. When someone is simply being polite, they smile after they decide to. But when someone is genuinely happy to see you, their face changes before they even think. That sentence stayed with Michael. The following week he began paying attention again. Daniel had been right. Every single time Ava unexpectedly noticed him, her expression changed before she spoke, before she waved, before she greeted him. It happened naturally. Her eyes softened, her eyebrows relaxed. Then came the smile. It wasn't practiced. It wasn't planned. It simply appeared. One Friday evening several coworkers decided to visit a nearby cafe after work. Michael almost declined. He was tired, but eventually agreed. The cafe was busy. Everyone laughed, shared stories, and talked about weekend plans. At one point the conversation split into smaller groups. Michael and Ava ended up sitting across from each other. For a few seconds neither of them spoke. Then Ava smiled. You know something. What? You always look more relaxed outside the office. Michael laughed. You noticed. I notice more than you think. The sentence surprised both of them. Especially Ava. She quickly looked away as if she hadn't meant to say it out loud. Michael didn't tease her. He simply smiled. Because sometimes, the smallest sentences reveal the biggest feelings. As the evening continued, Michael realized something else. Whenever someone else told a story, Ava listened politely. Whenever Michael spoke, she smiled before he even reached the point, almost as though hearing his voice alone was enough to brighten her mood. For the first time, Michael stopped asking himself, does she like me? Instead, he began wondering, why does she seem happiest when we're together? That question stayed with him long after the evening ended. Michael couldn't stop thinking about what Ava had said. I notice more than you think. It wasn't a dramatic confession. It wasn't even meant to be. But those 5 words stayed with him throughout the weekend. Sometimes the smallest sentences reveal emotions people have been trying to hide for months. Monday morning arrived. Michael walked into the office, carrying his laptop and a cup of coffee. As usual, everyone seemed busy. Phones were ringing. Conversations filled the room. Before he reached his desk, he heard a familiar voice. Good morning. He turned around. There was Ava, smiling again. Not the polite smile she gave clients. Not the quick smile she gave strangers. The same warm smile he had begun noticing weeks earlier. This time, Michael decided to observe instead of guessing. As the day continued, he quietly paid attention. Whenever someone else entered the room, Ava looked up briefly before returning to her work. Whenever Michael entered, she looked up immediately, even if she was focused on something important. Even if she was speaking to someone else. It wasn't intentional. Her attention simply followed him. That's another silent sign many people never notice. When someone becomes emotionally interested, their attention naturally begins searching for you. Not because they're trying to. Because your presence has quietly become important to them. A few days later, the company organized a team meeting. Everyone sat around a large conference table. The manager explained several new projects. Michael happened to sit on the opposite side of the room from Ava. Halfway through the meeting, someone made an unexpected joke. Everyone laughed. Almost instinctively, Michael looked across the table. At exactly the same moment, Ava was already looking at him. For a second, neither of them looked away. Then both smiled. Neither one knew why. It simply happened. After the meeting, Daniel called Michael. So, Michael laughed. You were right. What happened? I think she keeps looking for me. Daniel smiled. People naturally look toward the person whose reaction matters most. Why? Because sharing moments creates emotional connection. If something funny happens, if something surprising happens, the first person we look toward is often the one we care about. Michael had never thought about it that way. Later that week, Ava was having a stressful day. Deadlines, emails, meetings, nothing seemed to go right. She barely smiled at anyone. Several coworkers even asked if everything was okay. She simply replied, "I'm just tired." Late that afternoon, Michael walked past her desk. He noticed she looked exhausted. Without saying much, he placed a small chocolate bar beside her keyboard. "I remembered you like dark chocolate." Then he continued walking. Ava looked at the chocolate. Then looked at Michael. A slow smile appeared across her face. This one was different. It wasn't cheerful. It wasn't excited. It was grateful. Sometimes people smile because they're happy. Sometimes they smile because they finally feel understood. That evening, Ava couldn't stop thinking about such a simple gesture. The chocolate wasn't expensive. Anyone could have bought it. But Michael had remembered something she mentioned weeks earlier. He had been listening. Not just hearing. Listening. That realization made her smile again while driving home. The next morning, Chloe noticed something unusual. "You've been smiling all morning." Ava looked confused. "Have I?" "Yes. And every time your phone lights up, you secretly hope it's him." Ava laughed. "I do not." Chloe raised an eyebrow. "Really?" At that exact moment, Ava's phone vibrated. She reached for it immediately. It wasn't Michael. Without realizing it, she looked slightly disappointed. Chloe noticed. "You just proved my point." Ava sighed. "I think something's happening." "What?" "I don't just enjoy talking to him anymore. I enjoy knowing he's around." That's when many people realize their feelings have quietly grown. It's no longer about conversations. It's about presence. One Friday evening, heavy rain began falling just as everyone left work. People rushed toward their cars. Michael opened his umbrella. As he reached the parking lot, he noticed Ava standing beneath the entrance, waiting for the rain to slow down. Without hesitation, he walked over. "You'll be waiting forever." She laughed. "Probably." He lifted the umbrella slightly. "Come on." They walked together through the rain. The streets were quiet. Neither of them seemed in a hurry. After several minutes, Ava suddenly smiled. "You know what's strange?" "What?" "I've smiled more this week than I have in months." Michael looked at her. "Really?" She nodded. "I didn't even notice until today." Sometimes happiness arrives so quietly that we only recognize it after it has already become part of our life. They reached her car. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Finally Ava asked, "Can I tell you something honestly?" "Of course. I don't smile differently because I want to impress you." Michael stayed silent. She continued softly, "I smile differently because seeing you genuinely makes me happy." Those words were simple, but they carried more honesty than any perfect romantic speech ever could. Michael smiled. "So I wasn't imagining it." She laughed. "No, you weren't." On the drive home, Michael realized something important. For weeks he had been searching for one obvious sign. One undeniable clue. Instead, the answer had been hidden inside dozens of tiny moments. A warmer smile, longer eye contact, natural laughter, looking for him in a crowd, remembering little details, being happier simply because he was there. Real attraction rarely announces itself with dramatic words. It usually appears through small, consistent behaviors repeated over time. Of course, it's important to remember that smiling alone does not always mean romantic interest. Some people are naturally warm and friendly. That's why you should never judge someone's feelings based on a single smile. Instead, look for patterns. Does she smile differently only around you? Does her body language become more relaxed? Does she remember small things you've shared? Does she naturally look for you in a room? Does your presence seem to change her mood? When several of these signs appear together over time, they often reveal far more than words ever could. Because sometimes, the biggest confession isn't spoken. It's hidden inside a smile that becomes just a little brighter whenever you walk into the room.